I'm Rob Wormald. Good, that's up there. I'm on the Angular 2 core team. I'm also on the Angular mobile team. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm Rob Wormald on Twitter. I'm Rob Wormald on GitHub. I'm pretty much Rob Wormald everywhere. It's kind of a benefit of having a strange last name. You can get the same handle everywhere. I've also had a cold for like the past 3 days, so if I like pass out, collapse, whatever, just applaud and I'll walk off the stage and it'll be fine, right? So today we're going to talk about Reactive Angular. But first, I just want to talk about Angular Mobile, because this is something that's kind of new, and we haven't really talked about it publicly. So like, I get to announce it, if you like, today. And so Angular Mobile is a new group on the Angular team. And it's we're kind of separated from the main core team. We sit in our own little room at Mountain View. We kind of close the door to everybody else. And we get to experiment. So I have like the coolest job on the Angular team right now. And we don't have to build the framework as much. We get to play with it. We get to use it. We get to build cool new stuff on the side of it. We're focused on mobile, obviously. That's why it's called Angular Mobile. So we look at stuff like performance and efficiency and solving hard problems. But we also, like I said, we build apps. We're building a couple of kind of reference apps right now. And part of that is to kind of learn patterns, learn what you guys are doing out in the community. And we kind of learned it from the community. We talk to the community. But I guess the point about this is like that we get to experiment outside of the kind of main framework building job. And I said the kind of key thing about this is we get to solve the really hard problems. And so when I say hard problems, especially on mobile, I just want to kind of talk about that for a second. So everybody here probably builds Angular apps. And so I think Angular 1 is very much a framework. We described it as a framework. It was for building apps. Angular 2 is more about being a platform, right? So we're going to talk about, we're going to do web apps, we're going to do mobile apps, we'll do native apps, we have Electron apps. Like, it's a whole different kind of idea. And so on the mobile team, the first thing we have to think about is there's a huge range of stuff, right? So you have your iPhone 6, which is like basically a desktop computer nowadays. And then you have like a $10 Android device that you buy at Walmart. And so one of the things that we want to do is make sure that the stuff that you guys write and that we write and the kind of the tools that we give you are going to run equally well in both of those places. And if not equally well, then at least you have a backup. You have some way to make it work on, as I said, like a really awesomely powerful mobile device, but also the cheapest kind of lowest end thing you could buy. So we have some real, like we have $10 phones in the office that we have to run stuff on and test against. The other thing, and this will be quite relevant as we get into my presentation, is the difference between like what 4G LTE, what modern Wi-Fi looks like, versus really low power stuff, edge, and kind of the really kind of low bandwidth stuff. And again, we want to make sure that Angular works in both of these scenarios. The other thing is single page apps and this concept of time to first interaction. So over the past year or so, there's been a really big push, I think, in the web to make things load quickly, make that first impression, that first thing that you do on an app really, really fast. And so these are these kind of problems that we look at on the mobile team. And so we use a whole bunch of different stuff. And again, this goes back to this idea of Angular being a platform. So we do stuff like we're using Universal to render the application out on the server first. And that means that we can serve it out to you instantly, right? There's no load time. We use web workers. So we have this idea of being able to render an application in the sort of front-end thread, but also actually run the application in a web worker. And that gives us the ability to do really, really sort of heavy work in the background and keep that front thread, that main UI thread, really, really responsive. We use service workers. So we've got a new project called Angular Offline that you should check out. And service workers are going to give us the ability to not only do offline stuff and be able to work with an app when you don't have a network connection or when you have a poor network connection, but also, again, speed up that first thing. So if we've got your application cached, it means that we don't have to go off to the network and fetch it, right? And the other thing we want to do is leverage framework capabilities. And so we're going to talk about change detection. And I think everybody probably watched Pascal's talk this morning, which was really good about change detection. And so I think that having seen that, what I'm going to talk about today will probably make a little bit more sense, which is good, right? And the other really cool thing that we do is all of this stuff together, right? So we have a couple of demos that we're working on where we start by rendering an application out on the server side, and then we boot that in the background with a web worker, and then when the web worker boots, we replace the content that's been rendered on the server. And then obviously we cache that all offline. So we're doing a whole bunch of this kind of stuff all at the same time, and it makes for some really, really sort of interesting work. Part of that work is Reactive Angular. So Angular, I think one of the scary things about Angular 2 for a lot of people is you have this idea that like, oh my God, everything has changed, right? Everything is different. I'm an Angular developer. Is it going to be scary and different? Am I having to learn everything new? Do I have to forget everything that I already know? The answer to that, I have to say, like up front, is no, right? If you want to keep doing Angular 2 apps the way you do Angular 1 apps, awesome, you can do that. All that stuff still exists. We still have NG model and all that stuff that you like. But our team is focused on reactive, and this is kind of about doing things slightly differently, learning new ways to do things, learning new lessons. And so things that are important for us, like I said, are reactive is going to give us improved performance, improved efficiency, and really the thing for me, and what I'm going to talk about today, is developer experience, right? So not only do we want to make our apps better and faster and stronger, but we want to make it easier to write. We want to make them easier to manage. We want to make them easier to build. And so I think that's really what I'm going to talk about in this talk. Now, I know it's just after lunch, so everybody's kind of fallen asleep. So we released a video yesterday, and I'm just going to show this to you because I think this, if you don't trust me on this topic, this is Jafar Hussein, who works at Netflix. And he did an interview yesterday or a couple of days ago. And so I just want to show this to you because this is really going to kind of tell everybody that I know what I'm talking about, that what we're talking about here is actually a valid idea. This is Jafar. He works at Netflix. And he's kind of, to me, he's who I learned everything that I'm going to talk about kind of from. So this is Reactive Angular. And this is kind of Jafar's take on it. So I'll start this up for you. Hopefully you can all hear this.
I would say that Angular 2 is really exciting.
It's really weird.
New models for UI development, and I'm very excited. I do like Angular 2. I think it's a fantastic framework. Angular 2 is really exciting. New models for UI development, and I'm very excited. I do like Angular 2. I think it's a fantastic framework. Angular 2 is really exciting. New models for UI development, and I'm very excited. I do like Angular 2. I think it's a fantastic framework. Angular 2 is really exciting. New models for UI development, and I'm very excited. I do like Angular 2. I think it's a fantastic framework. Super excited about it.
Right, so if you don't trust me, at least trust him, right? Like, he said it, you can hear him, right? So there you go. So we're going to talk about reactive programming. Reactive programming, I think you could probably briefly describe it as programming the observables. Raise your hand in this room if you've heard of observables, if you've used them, have you played with them at all. That's awesome, that's really good. I'm not going to go into them too deeply because there's a couple people later today who are going to do much deeper dives on observables. But I'm just going to give you kind of like the 1-minute overview on observables. So if you haven't heard of them, at least you're going to have some idea of what I'm going to talk about here, right? So observables. They're a new primitive. They're a little bit like promises in that they deal with asynchronous things. So you've probably used promises. Good, that's great. Observables are like promises plus for me. They're also like arrays. So unlike a promise, they'll deliver multiple values, right? So an observable can give you one or many values. They're lazy, and again, we'll get into that a little bit later, but lazy meaning they're not going to do any work until you tell them to. So you can set up an observable, you can set up an entire application, and have nothing execute until you ask it to. And I think this is interesting when you start to build applications and compose these things together. It opens up some really new ways to think about how you kind of structure your application. They're reusable, so unlike a promise, where a promise you kind of start it, it does its work, and it will only ever give you that one value. You can't retry a promise, you can't redo a promise. Observables are retriable, they're reusable. They're disposable, and this is something that's really important to us on the mobile team. So promise, again, one of the really kind of powerful things about a promise is that when you start a promise, it's going to do one of two things, right? It's going to complete or it's going to reject. One of the two things is going to happen, and only one of two things is going to happen. You can't cancel a promise, right? Which means anything that you're doing with promises, like HTTP recalls and fetch and things like that, once they've started, they're going to finish, right? There's no way to stop them. And I think that's a powerful thing about promises. But again, we're talking about HTTP requests, things like that. We may want to cancel them. We may want to stop them. We may not care about the result. So that's kind of that's one of the big reasons we like them on the Angular team. And they're composable. It means that we can plug them together, do interesting things, snap them in, and kind of reuse them, and really do some powerful, powerful stuff in the way that you think about structuring your application. So again, this is like the 30-second introduction to observables. I've already talked about it for like a minute and a half, so I'm sorry. But so the basic way you create an observable is much like how you'd create a promise, right? You declare a new observable. It gets past a subscriber. I just call it a sync in this example. And then you subscribe to it. So an observable takes 3 callbacks, right? It's got subscribe, and you either get the next value here, You either get the error, and then when it's done, because unlike a promise, right, it's going to get one or many values. So you need to know when it's completed, so you get this extra callback, right? So it's a lot like a promise, like a then, except you have this third function that tells you when it's done, when it's completed, right? So kind of the manual way of doing this is you take this sync, and then to propagate values out to the outside world, you call next. And that means that you're just going to push that value out, right? So imagine we're doing some sort of asynchronous work in here. You're going to push those values to the outside world. You subscribe, and it'll sort of basically work like this, right? Observable is complete. So again, when you're done doing the work you're doing, and whether that's one or many things, you can call the complete method on that sync. And so you're going to do next, 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 complete. If you get an error, you can propagate that to the outside world again. So this is analogous to promise.reject. One thing to note is that an observable will either complete or it will error. One of those two things will happen, never both. And then this is the kind of really powerful thing that you kind of see that's quite different to a promise. So this is a really basic observable that basically just ticks over at 1,000 intervals, right, or 1,000 milliseconds. It's going to push that word tick out. And then when I'm done, I have this clear interval function here. So what I'm returning from my observable is the way to clean up, dispose of, unsubscribe to my observable. And so we can shorten this last block of code here. There's a little helper called interval. And so what we do is we create a new observable that ticks over every 1,000 milliseconds. We subscribe to it. It's going to log that value out for us. And then at some point later, we can unsubscribe. And so it allows us to sort of clean up that work. And the powerful thing about this is that all of that is encapsulated in the observable. It means we don't have to go back up to where it was declared in the DOM. We don't have to keep a reference to it. All of the information necessary to get values out of it and clean it up are all encapsulated in that little observable bubble, which is nice. So I've talked about observables here for the past, sort of 5 or 6 minutes. And I think that one of the things that I like to really say, and I think what I want to get across to you, is that observables are a primitive. They're a new part of the language. But they don't solve problems by themselves. Observables are very much a different concept than reactive programming. And really what I want to talk to you today is about reactive programming. So you have to know how observables work to do this. But reactive is much more about a way of thinking about applications, how to structure them, how to flow them together. The observable is really just like the raw building blocks for doing this. So I mentioned earlier developer experience, right? And I think this is what I want to get across to you today and what we're going to demo is we want to make complex apps. We want to make them easier to write, easier to understand. And what I mean, like, you should be able to look at your code and somebody else should be able to look at your code and have a good idea of what's actually going on, right? It should be easy to understand these applications. We want to make them easier to test. And if I have time at the end of this, I don't talk too much. I've got some really cool testing stuff to show you. And then fun. And again, I'm a little bit strange because I'm like married to observables, as Frank said, but I think they're really fun to work with. I think it really makes programming really, really simple, fun, and it just allows me to express ideas, I think, unlike anything I've ever been able to do before with programming. So rather than just talking to you for the next 30 minutes, 30 minutes, perfect, about observables, about reactive programming, I'm just going to do live coding. This always blows up in people's faces, so like the rest of my talk is going to be live coding, basically. So it's either going to go really well or really, really badly. I hope it goes well. So we're going to switch over, and I've got like kind of 3 demos to show you here. We'll start with kind of the quintessential observable concept, and for me, this is the Typeahead. A little more actually slides to show you here. So the Typeahead, right? Raise your hand if you've ever built a Typeahead in your application. And this Typeahead autocomplete, right? Raise your hand if that was fun, if you enjoyed doing that, if it was something that it was easy to reason about. There's like 2 really weird people over there. Shai Resnick, he thinks everything is fun though, right? So I think if you're going to build a Typeahead in like the classic, and classic in JavaScript terms is like 6 months ago, right? It's not really all that old of a concept. This is what it would look like if you were doing an Angular 2 today. You'd have an NG model on an input, right? So you've got some sort of binding to a controller, and then you've got an event, in this case a key up, that tells you, like, call a method when I've done something, right? The controller of this looks something like when this key up gets fired, we're going to call our search change, we're going to pass the event through, and we're going to call this do search method, right? We're going to sort of take the search text out of that model. We're going to make a request with it. We're going to use promises in this case, just for comparison's sake. We're going to make a fetch request. We're going to dot then that, right? And then we're going to take those videos and we're going to assign them to the controller. So this kind of makes sense to everybody. Everybody's probably written something that looks vaguely like this, right? So that's like the super basic type ahead, right? Type aheads, though, quickly get complicated. So on most type aheads, you're going to want to do something like debouncing, throttling, right? You don't want to make 10,000 requests every time you type in the box. So you're going to do this sort of this rigmarole to make sure that, OK, I'm going to set a timeout. And then if I've got a timeout, and we want to make sure that when the next value comes in, if I've got one, I'm going to cancel the timeout. But if it's not, we're going to go ahead and do the request, right? So it gets really weird immediately to start dealing with this. And like if I actually had all this code on the slide, it's 30 or 40, 50, 100 lines to do this. And then you get into this problem of response order, right? So if you're making a bunch of requests, you got to make sure that what you're doing is in order, right? So you've got requests coming back. You want to keep, maybe one takes longer because it's a longer database query. You have to think about this. You have to manage this stuff, and it gets really complicated. So what makes this hard, right? You've got a bunch of different events. You've got DOM events. You've got model changes. You've got promises. You've got side effects, right? So you got to keep track of your timeout ID. You've got to keep track of all these little things all over your application. State is leaky, right? So again, you've got this ID somewhere. You got to remember to clean up your timeout if it's not going to run. If I move away, I've got to clean that time up. And it's inefficient. And I think this is the thing that, as on the mobile team, we really care about, right? If I'm doing a type ahead and I'm making requests, if I type again, I don't care about those sort of previous responses out, right? So I could ignore them, but those bytes are still burned. I'm still making that. I'm still using that bandwidth, even if I'm not going to use the response. And again, this goes back to that idea of doing cancellation with observables. So let's build one reactively. Not cool, I haven't showed it to you yet. So let's build one, right? And I want to see kind of how easy this really is to do. So we're going to be really brave here. I hope the Wi-Fi doesn't blow up on me. We're going to build a really quick type ahead component here. So we'll do some live coding. I'm going to create a component, and hopefully, by now, this looks sort of vaguely familiar to everybody. So we're going to create a new component. We're going to call it my type ahead. Thanks, y'all. Better? Thank you. These guys are my team. They're watching out for me. That's awesome. And I'll go ahead and add a template to that. If I could spell, that would be even more awesome. So I'm going to grab that input. And we'll call this like class my type ahead. Grab that. Bring that into my directives array. And with any luck, not cool, and we're not quite there yet. I think I remembered to start Webpack. Yes, good, Groovy. Cool, no errors. That's a good start. So I'm going to now use my type ahead. Thank goodness for autocomplete. Yes, cool. So hopefully, we're going to see our little text box pop up here. Right, Groovy, good start. So let's do this reactively. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab this control. If you've done forms in Angular 2, you've kind of used control probably without being aware of it. This is a way to use kind of an abstract control without actually having to declare a form and all of these sort of shenanigans. So I'm going to grab a control. I'm going to call this something like search inputs. And we're just going to call that as a new control. And then what I'm going to do is connect that to my type ahead here with an ng form control. So I call that, what did I call that? Search inputs, autocomplete, yes. And then what we're going to do is inside of the constructor, so like as this component gets set up, I'm going to subscribe to it. Controls give us a value changes property here. And this value changes is an observable. So it's going to tell us, it's going to notify us, it's going to do that, pushing the values to the outside thing every time that we type in the text box. So we're going to do this step by step so I don't go too far and look stupid when I screw it up. So now, hopefully, thank goodness for Webpack, as I type in the box, you'll see it's going to spit those values out, right? Super simple stuff. That's Observables 101. So the key thing here is we're starting with an observable, right? The first thing we're doing is taking these events as an observable. So what does a type ahead do? The point of a type ahead, right, is to take the input that you're putting into the box, you're going to translate it into some sort of query, you're going to hit the server, get the response back, right, and do something with it. So observables give us the ability to do, thank you, map. So map is like you're used to on arrays. It's the same exact kind of functionality. And what we're going to do is every time a new value comes down the pipe, we want to turn it into URL, right? Very simple stuff. So we're going to just think about it like an array. Each time a new value comes out of the array, we're going to map it. Each time a new value comes out of the observable, we're going to map it. So we're going to take this query. This is just the text coming out of the box. I cheated here, and I've got a little make URL function. We're going to call that with our query. And now if we subscribe to that, again, we're going to do this step by step, just so nothing goes terribly wrong on me. What we should see hopefully here, nope. Oh, yes. So here's a trick. We use Reactive Extensions, but what we don't want to do is give you the entire Reactive Extensions library. This is Igor Minor's doing. He's sitting over here looking quietly. We want to make sure that you don't have to use all of Rx if you don't want to. So we ask you to explicitly import the operators you're going to use. So that would look something like add operator map. I'm going to cheat because I'm doing a demo, and I'm just going to import the entire library, which is nice. So hopefully now we won't get any errors. Groovy. So now you can see as I'm typing in the box, we're taking that text, right, and we're transforming it into URLs. Everybody good so far? Nod your head yes? Yes? Cool. So what are we doing? We're going to take these URLs, and now we want to map them into requests, right? We're just going to continue this process of doing this sort of simple transformations. We're taking stuff, transforming into other stuff, transforming into other stuff, right? So what do we want to do? I would say something like we want to map this to a request, but these requests are asynchronous, right? We're going to use a new operator, a little special operator called flat map. Flat map is exactly like map. It does the exact same thing, except that if you return something observable or a promise from a flat map, what it will do is wait until the promise or the observable settles, resolves, and then propagate the value down. So it's called flat map because it flattens out the asynchronous, the asynchronous behavior in this stream, right? So we're going to take that URL that we're getting passed in. I'm going to inject HTTP into my components in the constructor. So now I've got HTTP available to me. And we're going to make an HTTP request with that URL. And so again, what we're doing here is each time the URL comes down the pipe, we're going to turn that into a request and subscribe to it. So hopefully now, hopefully I haven't canceled my token that I've been using this. Yes, cool. So now we're getting a response back from YouTube, right? So again, notice that I'm not doing subscribe for this HTTP GET. I'm not doing .then or anything like that. Flat map is doing that work for me. Now, we're getting a response back here. So this is like a raw response. So what we want to do is take that. We're going to map that response, which is coming back. And we're going to get the JSON out of it. And I'm going to just make sure that I type properly here. That's going to be a response object, which I need to import. So we'll make sure we get in here. Should have any errors gone right. So again, I'm making a request, flat mapping, waiting for the response to come back, and then mapping again and turning it into the JSON, right? So now, hopefully, now I have actual JSON responses coming back from YouTube, right? Cool. So I don't remember what this YouTube thing looks like. So it's an object coming back with a nested items, and it's got some data in those items. So we'll be clever again. We're just going to map nice and easy. So we've got the response coming back, and we care about the response.items. And again, I'll be getting the pattern here that this is all kind of flowing together nicely, right? Cool. So now I've got actual objects coming back. Groovy. And so if I was going to do this kind of the traditional way, I would do something like, so I've got the videos coming out of my subscription here. Videos. Yeah, cool. Potato, potato. And we're going to declare our videos property here as an array. Oops, we'll do any array, because I'm not going to type YouTube responses right now. And we do something like this.videos is videos. And again, if you've done Angular at all, you should have now hopefully learned about NG4, which is like NG repeat. And hopefully I won't screw this up, because I always forget it. I've been doing this for months and still get this wrong. So NG4 video of videos. And just because I don't remember what the response looks like that, I'm going to do video. I'm going to pipe that through JSON here. And with any luck, right, so now we got stuff rendering in the view. Good, cool. One of the things we've got in Angular 2 is the async pipe, though. We're going to make this a little bit easier. So we can actually get rid of this subscription. We don't have to do this manually. And what we can say is this.videos is now, let me import observables so I can type this properly. Observable from RxJS observable. Good. And we're going to make it an observable of videos. So now what I can do is return. So what's returned from this whole flow is now an observable of videos, right? So I can do this.videos here. So there's no manual subscription. The async pipe that I'm going to add in a second, and actually remember to do that here. Videos, async. So now, subscription should happen automatically. Angular is going to unwrap that observable for me. And now if I do something like this, same thing happens, right? So that's a Typeahead to start. But we talked about all the complicated stuff you have to do in Typeaheads, right? All the stuff that makes this hard. So like, how do we do debounce with observables? How many lines of code do you think that'll take? It takes 1. We'll do debounce time, and we'll say 200 milliseconds. That's it, done. So now if I go back and I don't mess up my code, now nothing changed. You'll notice that it will give us a bit of a delay before it makes that request again. So that's debouncing done, nice and easy. The other thing we talked about, though, was cancellation, right? I don't care, after I've hit that second word, what the responses are. I don't care about them coming back. So again, like everything else in observables, this is really nice and easy. So I'm going to change my flat map, which I just taught you about, to Switchmap. Switchmap is exactly the same as flat map, except that if something is pending, right? So if we've got an HTTP request pending here, it will cancel it for us. It will actually cancel, stop the work, ignore the request. And because Angular's HTTP library uses observables, we're actually going to cancel the underlying work. So I'm going to comment out this debounce time, because it's a little bit hard to see what's going to happen here. But I'm going to put that switch map in, and hopefully we're on just a slow enough network that we'll see the magic happening. And let's put it on the bottom. Cool. See if I can do it again. It's too quick for me. So the working theory here is that we're actually going to cancel these requests before they go out. Maybe you know where the command is? There it is on the bottom. Cool. Thank you. That's a good call. See, they're looking out for me again. It's really nice. Throttling. Turn it on to 2G like you're on a mobile device, right? Go back to our network. Escape that. How do I hide this? Anybody hide this? Thank you. So I got throttling turned on now. We'll search for cats. This is really screwing me up today. Hello. 1024 by 768. Awesome. Ah! Ha! OK. Let's try it again. So you can see it's actually that search there that's been canceled, right? That is no longer doing work. Search for dogs. You'll see it's actually going to cancel that work, ignore the bytes. And if you're traveling like me, so I'm roaming right now in AT&T, it's like $37 a megabyte while I'm overseas, right? So this kind of stuff matters. It makes a difference on mobile devices. So turn that back on here. So this debounce, switchmap, right? We've got debouncing, we've got cancellation, all in what, like 8 lines of code here? It's all built in. It's all nice and easy. Good. Everybody think that's pretty reasonable? Switch back to my original tab. Cool. Cool, right? Nod your heads. Yes, please. Thank you. Got through the first demo. Good. Cool. So well, this is a little more audacious now. So real-time applications. I got started on Angular working with the Sales project. So Sales is like a real-time node framework that does delivery of updates and all kinds of cool, crazy real-time stuff. I work sort of with Google now, so we use Firebase a lot. Firebase is a Google project now. So we're going to do something really audacious here, and I've got like 12 minutes, so yeah, we'll probably be able to do this. Let's see if we can build like a real-time chat in 3 minutes with observables. Yeah, we're going to do that. So one of the things we get to work on the mobile team is the Angular Fire project. So we've got new Angular Fire 2, which is like an early alpha. This is Firebase for Angular 2. So we've got a Angular Fire library here. We've got an Angular Fire service. We've got the default Firebase, and I've set up a new chat here, Firebase. And we're going to do the same kind of basic thing we just did. What we're going to do is we're going to say this dot messages is a Firebase observable. I should import that probably. Firebase observable. So this is like a specially custom subclass observable built by the Firebase team, or built by us actually for the Firebase team. We're going to say messages, not this dot messages, of any array. And we're going to do something very simple. So basically what I've done before this demo is I set up a new Firebase. This is like an empty database in the cloud. We're going to set that to the URL we're going to use. And I'm going to create this dot messages is Angular Fire dot list messages. So this is going to use the Angular Fire 2 service. It's going to go out to the cloud. It's going to make an observable of the data at this URL, right? So it's messages here. And then we want to do something like add message. And what we're going to do is pass through an element here. And what I want to do is have a button. Now we're speeding up less error messages. So we'll say send. And when we click the button, we want to add a message. We're going to pass through this input here. And it'll also make sense in just a second as to why I'm going to pass through the elements. We're going to pass through the new message. And what we want to do is just like we did before, we're going to use that async pipe. We're going to ng4 over messages, message of messages. We're going to use the async pipe again. So again, this is going to grab that Firebase observable. It's going to subscribe to it and render the results out for me automatically. It's a UL. We don't actually want to repeat on the UL. Why did nobody say anything on that one? Come on. You're supposed to be looking out for me here. li and li. I'm going to do message.text. And so what I'm going to do is obviously type in the box. When I hit my add message, I'm going to get that element. I want to say let my new message is text is l.value. We're going to take our messages list. We're going to add our message to that list. New message. And we're going to clear out the value of that thing. Hopefully nothing. I'm going to be really amazed if this works the first time. So let's see. No errors. Oh, yeah, good call. Let's turn that off. If I can find it again. Now I'm looking really stupid and fool around looking for throttling again. Throttling off. Thank you, Olivier. Appreciate that. It's much faster now. Firebase. So let's see. That's coming in. Message.text. Message.text. Let's render that as JSON. Just render the message. It's all gone terribly wrong. Let's see what happens here. What? Am I? No? That would be too easy. Way too easy. Let's just make sure that everything's coming through. So I'm not going to jump into the debugger because that'll make me look stupid as well. Let's just make sure our value comes out here. Console, yeah. An error message. Circular structure to JSON. That's interesting. Messages, l.value, new message, text is l.value. Coming through. Messages. Not JSON, that's. Duh. So Firebase. Hello. So Firebase basically wraps everything up in a nice little package for me. So I need to get the value from Firebase. I practiced this morning as well. I was like, don't forget to do this. And I forgot to do this, right? So there's objects coming through now. Object, good. So now we'll do message.value.text. Yes. So just to show you this is like a real-time actual thing. Just unpack that. Where's my other window? Let's unpack that. Set that to our Firebase. Clever. Ha! So yeah. Hello from NG-NL. Real time. 4 minutes. 7 minutes? Cool. 7 minutes. Think we can do one more? Let's see. Switch back over to the slides, get to where we were. So that was really awesome. Firebase, Observables, observable powered. This is really early alpha. There's a bunch of cool new stuff we're going to do with this. We got this working like last week, a couple weeks ago. It's on NPM if you want to play with it. If you've not used it before, it's really nice and easy. Lots of cool stuff coming to that. Easy, really easy. It's not to do with me. Who broke the thing? Cable's plugged in. Frank, help! Yes, okay. So we did like a Typeahead and a real-time chat, but what about real applications, right? Like what makes real applications really difficult? To me, it's about state management. We talked a little bit about state management, right? Keeping things in sync, keeping arrays full of the right information, keeping data that's not going to be sort of spilling all over the place. Observables are really, really good at that. I think Cyria's going to do a talk a little bit later today talking about Redux. As Frank said, I created a project called NGRX. That's an observable-powered Redux, basically. So we're going to do a quick demo of that. Point I want to make about this is like Redux is a React thing. This is a totally stolen concept from React. Dan, who wrote it, has been really gracious about helping me out, showing things, kind of teaching me how to use Redux properly. And I basically just wrapped it up and made it work with RX. So let's see if in 5 minutes and 25 seconds I can do a Redux-powered to-do list, right? So just if you've ever used Redux before, and again, I think Cyria's going to cover this a lot more deeply, but I've got a reducer here. And so this is a Redux concept. A reducer is basically, it's going to get the previous state like a reducing function does. So in this case, our state is to-dos. It's getting an action, which in this case has a type, some sort of key to identify what we're doing, and then a payload. And we basically just do a simple switch statement that says, like, if we're going to add a to-do, we're going to concat the payload to our list of state, right? We're just going to add that new to-do to the list of to-dos. Same thing for update and complete and delete. We're going to filter them out, right? So this is like basic JavaScript. This is nothing reactive. What we're going to do is using this store library, this reactive store library, we're going to wrap it up. And so I've imported that to-dos reducer. I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to take providers here. I'm going to provide from my NGRX library up here. I'm going to use this provide store function. And I'm going to call it with to-dos. So I'm basically passing in that reducer, which effectively makes like a table in a database, except we're doing this reactively, right? So I've set up my store. It's really nice and easy. And what I'm going to do is in my constructor, I'm going to do store. We're going to inject the store. And again, like we've been doing all day long today, we're going to do any in here just to cheat. We're going to say to-dos is an observable. I got to import that of to do. We'll do any to-dos. We'll import observable from RxJS Rx. So again, like we've been doing the other two things, I've done this simple thing where I've taken observable, I've signed as a property, and I can treat it almost like it's an array, right? It's not like a promise where I'm having to call it. It's just like an array that updates itself, right? So in this case, I'm going to do store dot, let me say, it's just this dot to-dos, which is my observable, is store dot select. So this is like doing a SQL query against my store, right? I'm saying, give me an observable stream of the data in my to-dos table. I'm going to say to-dos. So again, this key here matches with the to-dos here. So let's have declared a table. We're going to, again, I should have set out my lists before I started this talk. It would have been faster. We're going to do to-do of to-dos. We're going to do list item 2 minutes 40. Here we go. To-do.text. So this is like, have you noticed the common theme here that it all looks pretty much the same, right? I had a Typeahead and a chat, and now I'm doing a to-do list thing, and they're all pretty much the same code, right? So what? Thank you. Good call. Should stop talking while I code. Good. And then again, we do this thing where we have like an input, and we're going to give it a key, so like new to-do. And we'll call it a type of text. And we'll have a button. That when we click it, we're going to add the to-do. We're going to pass through that new to-do. And we'll say like add Groovy, add to-do. This. So unlike Firebase, what I'm going to do here is say this dot to-dos. I'm going to dispatch an action against my store. This dot store dot dispatch. And this is basically saying like I'm going to perform some action against the store. That again maps up with my to-do key here, and I'm going to pass in this add to-do. Grab that. That's what we want to say is it's a type of add to-do, and we're going to send a payload through of text, and that's the text from the element coming through, l.value, and we will clear the L when we're done and make that a string as it should be, right? So again, I've sort of subscribed to the state of the application here. It's going to update every time the state changes, and then I'm just going to dispatch an action against the store to make it work. That all looks good. New to do, async. Thank you for the async call. Good. Text, cool. And find my browser window. It's all going to go wrong. Just open a new browser window because that's easier. Do's, right? So now hopefully it's like learn observables. Yes. Cool. So 3 kind of really different style apps, all pretty much the same code, all pretty much the same sort of techniques, the same functionality here. This library is mine. Again, it's on GitHub. It's ngrx/store. You can play with it. This is very much, let's go back to my slides here, very much a work in progress. Yeah. Stop. Cool. Almost done. So it's a work in progress. Testing, we can talk about testing. I'm going to put the slides up on the web here. Reactive testing is really fun. There's some really clever stuff we can do with testing. I will tweet about this probably later today, so you can kind of learn about this. I'll put these slides up. Testing, skip, and good. So stuff coming soon from us. Declarative observables from the view. So I was doing a lot of imperative stuff. I was clicking buttons, and what we'd really like to be able to do is make all this observable stuff come off the view a lot easier. Wait for that. Marble testing from Rx we're going to get. Better docs is one of the things we really want to work on this. More examples, more blogs. A couple of people have done some really, really good blogs about this. Check them out. More of those are good. More blogs, please. That's it. Subject.complete.